think we have 2 more minutes. Wait for latecomers.
Great. Is this working? Yes. Okay, good.
Do you want to sing something? Or?
Well, we're gonna wait. It's only
There's a couple more minutes.
Yeah, it's not even.
But
But
like early.
it's New Orleans.
This being New Orleans.
But I do want to ask a question before we get started. A show of hands for anyone in the audience who is currently in a crew or dresses with their, gets together with their extended family friends annually. Just keep your hands up for a second so we can see. Great. Okay, that informs a lot of the discussion, because that means that a lot of you are veterans of masking and the idea of crews. So I guess we should get. I'm sorry? I said there's always something. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can go ahead and get started. Hi, my name is Gianna Sachere, and I am a local, for better or worse, whatever that means. I grew up here and then left for about 25 years. So people here like to say, designate if someone's a local or not. I think if you leave and come back, it's like you wipe the slate clean. So I'm going to approach it that way. I'm going to introduce everyone on the panel, but there's a larger bio that you can look at for more information about everyone. But thank you so much for coming out on such a beautiful day for this panel discussion for Carnival from the ground up. If you haven't had a chance to see the exhibit, it's gorgeous. It's on the far fence on Decatur, and it's up until Carnival Day. And one more announcement, actually, we have a reception happening this Sunday from 11 to 1 with King Cake. It's sort of the opening of the exhibit, even though it has been up for a couple of weeks. But it's a celebration, and you can see other people there and celebrate. So without further ado, I'm going to just introduce everyone on the panel. We'll go from there. So we have Martha Radice, who is a social anthropologist at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, Canada. The photographer of the exhibit, Ryan Rigsbee Hodgson. Did I say that right?
Hodgson-Rigsbee.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not looking at my notes.
That's good.
Who's the photographer of the exhibit, and he has been photographing Carnival for over a decade, over 10 years. Then we have Stuart Auld, who was one of an early member of Society of Sainte Anne, who's been with them since the 80s, and is somewhat of you usher newbies along when they first join.
Oh, no, I stay away from them.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll get into that.
Figure it out.
Then we have Aryanna Gamble, who is a part of the intergalactic crew of Chewbacchus. And at the far right, and I should know this by heart, Big Chief Tyrone Pye Stevenson, who was with the Monogram Hunters. And Big Chief has a very storied and long career, being with a few tribes over the years. So we'll get started. So one of the first things that comes to mind is why this project and how did it come about, and then also how you two got together to do it.
So I actually met Ryan I'm an anthropologist. I study Carnival from the ground up, handmade Carnival, I guess. And when I first came to New Orleans to start studying, I met Ryan the same night that I met many of the people who would kind of become my crew and my people in New Orleans, and then which is the crew of T-Rex. And then wherever I looked, there was Ryan. He was doing with photos what I was doing with words. So he was documenting with his camera, and I was documenting with my notebook and my audio recorder. And it became obvious that we should collaborate, because he needs words sometimes and I need pictures sometimes. And so as my research progressed, and we planned to collaborate, and we planned to make an exhibit together at some point. And of course, things got a little delayed with the pandemic and so on. But this year, we were finally able to bring it together, and it's been quite an achievement, I think.
It is. It definitely is. Yes.
So yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on? This is just a part of a larger project that you're involved in.
For me, I'm working on especially the alternative walking crews, the new wave of walking crews and downtown crews, however we call them, in Carnival in New Orleans. And so one of the interesting things in working with Ryan is that Ryan is really documenting the entirety of Carnival, from the people making the king cake in the king cake bakeries to the people riding the Muses floats or the Rex floats, the big uptown floats. And so part of our collaboration was deciding what this exhibit would focus on. And we decided to really focus on people who make their carnival contributions, do their carnival practices on foot, outside in the streets, on foot at ground level, and who make all their art, their carnival art, by hand. So that was how we decided the theme of this particular exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to similarly make it accessible to everybody by putting it in an outdoor space. And the New Orleans Jazz Museum was kind enough to host us, to allow us to use their fence.
Right?
I'm from Chicago, and coming here with my partner Clay, who's from here, I discovered how much more to Mardi Gras there was than just like Bourbon Street and what most of the nation saw. And so I kind of fell in love with it. And when she decided that no more winters in Chicago and we were moving to New Orleans, I came along and have been here since, just kind of every year trying to find something new, some new angle to explore, and just kind of have fallen down the rabbit hole pretty deep at this point in terms of exploring Carnival. And just, it was great working with Martha to kind of box in the idea and kind of really get an edit that speaks different parts and kind of works together in a way that has taken months and months and months to put together, and then marry it with the text and quotes from people like these fine people and all the other people that have made up this project and make Carnival what it is. So, yeah.
I mean, I know you have probably hundreds, if not thousands, of photos of over the years.
Thousands.
Yeah. Are you expecting to further develop the work into something else from that, or?
I used to say that I'm working on a book, but I don't even, people ask me what I'm doing with all this, and I'm just like, I don't even know anymore. It'll eventually be some sort of big book, I guess, if people are still into books.
Yes.
No bias there. I don't even know anymore. I'm just kind of still going. It's like a creature of habit at this point.
Right.
But eventually it'll be something.
I'm working on a book.
Yes.
Yeah, and articles, and I try and some of what my work is kind of academic publications, but I try and publish in accessible venues as well, so that it's not behind a paywall and so on. So.
And you're developing a website with some of these photos. Right now we can see some of them, right?
Yes. If you go to graspingjoy.org, graspingjoy.org, it's in on the back of the little booklet that you have. Then you can access the exhibit edit there. But it was very much a collaborative effort where we discussed the themes of the exhibit, and then Ryan, who knows his photos really well, worked on the visual essay, which is full of kind of echoes from one photo to another, really beautiful visual motifs. And then I started talking to as many people as we could identify in the photos, some of whom I knew already, some of whom I didn't, and did interviews with people to be able to kind of pull out the captions that accompany each of the photos as well. It was a real pleasure. For instance, I had already interviewed Aryanna about her involvement in Chewbacchus as one of the overlords of Chewbacchus, but I had never talked with Stuart before, and I had never talked with Pi before, so it was a real pleasure getting to know people as part of this project.
Yeah, I can, when you look at the photos, you see just how vast and diverse it is for different kinds of people who are involved in Carnival. And for those who see Mardi Gras outside of New Orleans, usually they are seeing huge floats. They might see a glimpse of the French Quarter, but I actually feel sorry for people who don't live in New Orleans and haven't experienced Carnival from the ground up, because that's when you really get to see the joy and what it brings to a lot of people. It could help you overcome grief. It's joy and grief at the same time that we celebrate. I have a couple of questions, and they're mainly for our photo subjects. But we all sort of go into our own personal journey of joy. I was talking to Martha about this for Mardi Gras. You go into it wanting to have fun, but there is a moment when, if you do it year after year, it's sort of like Christmas or Thanksgiving with your family. You're like, next year I'm going to do this. You try to retool it, refine it, try to find some essence each year for yourself. And I'm curious for each participant. I'm going to start with you, Stuart. When did you, do you remember your first Mardi Gras?
Oh, yes.
And can you just briefly tell us about that? And also give us a sense of, when did you find your people, the people that you feel most comfortable with creatively, joyfully? Okay. Well, and that's usually how it unravels, right? The first year you're like, I should drink and have fun and wander around, and then you're like, wait, where are the other people like me?
I was pretty clueless my first year, because I was telling you outside, I moved here on All Saints Day of 1979, which was the year the police went on strike. And I remember one of the first things, I was staying with some friends up on Magazine Street, and one of the first things I thought was, who picked the colors for these bus stripes? That is, ew. And then as time went on, like 6 months later, Carnival was happening, and I had a job at Mr. B's. They had just opened. And my first really experience of Carnival was all these drunk tourists coming into Mr. B's after a parade. Like, somebody would go, "It's over," and they'd all come flying in. But Carnival Day, I had made some friends, and one of my friends said, "What are you doing for Mardi Gras?" And I was like, "Oh, no, all I had ever done was Halloween, which was my favorite thing," which you see that a lot. Early newcomers show up in Dracula outfits or something. It's like, it's okay, but it's not really what this is about. And he said, "Have you ever done drag?" And I said, "Oh, no, I didn't. I got just the taffeta gown for you." And he put me in this wine-colored taffeta off the shoulder, put a wig on my head. I had some kind of weird glasses and tap shoes. So that was my first Mardi Gras. But then by the next Mardi Gras, I think I found Sainte Anne probably that first year. I saw this Rari come up the street, which at that point was a couple few hundred people. Now it's like it stretches from one end of the quarter to the other by the end of the day. But that would have been 81, really, was the first year that I paraded with.
And Ariana, were you born in 81?
I was
Were
not
you
yet
here?
born in 81. I was born in 83. And, if I close my eyes and think of my earliest Mardi Gras memories, it's probably as a child, like wrapped up in a blanket, sitting on ice chest on St. Charles Avenue, like waiting for the parades to come. I was always very enamored with the Pete Fountain half-past walking crew. And that was always the moment I remember waking up on Mardi Gras Day. It was like, oh, the band's coming. I got to get up.
That's very cool. That's great. And how did you find your people, or did it? And it probably changed over time. The people. That
My
you were-
people, when I was little, were my family, right? And the strangers that you bartered chicken for king cake on the street. But Chewbacchus is really where I found my people. And I remember listening to the first time they rolled on the radio an announcement about these nerds who are planning to do some crazy stuff, walking in front of Bacchus, which would never fly today, and really didn't fly back then either, and being really upset that I was going to be out of town that weekend, and still hold it against my husband that we went to that wedding. But it was immediately in the back of my mind that these were my people, and sought them out the next year, and the rest is history. I mean,
But you're referring to Box of Wine the Sunday before. Oh,
no.
but
So
that's right,
Chewbacchus, the very
was, yeah.
first Chewbacchus
Yeah.
rolled on Bacchus Sunday.
Right. Okay.
It was a rabble
right.
group of probably about 30 or 40 nerds,
Okay. Yeah.
which is not what it is today.
No. No. So, you're just you're deep in thought. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
I was listening. Well, basically, my name is Chief Pye. I've been massing black massing Indians since I was 11 years old. Made my first suit when I was 11 years old. This coming year, this Mardi Gras here will be 43 years
Wow.
that I put an Indian suit on. My involvement with it, when I was a kid, we used to sit on a stoop for Mardi Gras, and the grown folks, my moms and them, they put costumes on and red beans, fried chicken, and all this stuff. And I mean, Lundi Gras, they got drunk. Mardi Gras, they still were drunk. And we couldn't go in the street. They were really strict about us being in the street. So we couldn't go in the street. So, I mean, I'm sitting on the stoop, and I'm like, I hear tambourines ringing. I'm like, where all this coming from? And I'm seeing a bunch of people just rushing, just past. I said, well, what's really going on? And this was the first time I seen a Mardi Gras Indian. And I'm sitting on the stoop, so I stood up. Couldn't go in the street. I stood up, and I'm like, I'm watching all these guys come down the street in the suits, and I'm like, man, they got to be guards. You know, I didn't know what I was looking at, you know. So I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, man, they guards, you know. I said, you know, so I said, I'm going to do that. I said, I want to do that. My mom was just like, brush me off, go ahead. I ain't got no time for all that. And, you know, that costs a lot of money and this and that. So 11 years old, that year, my involvement with it came from Tambourine and Fan with Jerome Smith. And the NOR program, we would go play football and basketball on the Hunters Field. And I wasn't into too much of that. You know, I just wanted the culture. And the guys that I knew, Jerome Jr. was massing before me. And me and him was best friends. And I said, man, I really want to do that. I said, how can I get in? He said, man, just come with me to this person's house, this person's house. And the massing part of it is that when I got involved with it, nobody helped me with it. You know, they just wanted, and I didn't know what they were doing, what they were telling me, but they was trying to bring the best out of you. You know, so, I mean, it's like every Mardi Gras Indian that mass not supposed to look alike. We all supposed to be different. So I learned how to sew by going to this house, going to that house, watching what they were doing, watching what that was doing, what this one was doing, and I put it all together. And I never missed a Mardi Gras, since then. But when I first started massing, it kind of really like scared me a lot because back then it was real primitive. It ain't the Mardi Gras that you see now. Back then when Indians paint their face and made these costumes and one part of town met the other part of town, it was some serious business. You know, so, you know, I mean, but even back then, we were protected, you know. I mean, they kept the kids out of the midst of everything, but you watched and you learned. And Tootie, Montana. I masked with Tootie, Montana for 23 years. And Tootie took the primitive part of it and brought it to the modern day part of it with the needle and thread. It's like, okay, it's a competition now. It's not about you going at this person or that person going at you. It's not about an uptown Indian. It's not about a downtown Indian. We all one Indian nation, you know. So, I mean, we all brothers and sisters in this thing. So he changed the game to where, you know, it's about you sitting down sewing and putting the time in it. It's just like everything else. What you put in it is what you're going to get out of it, you know. So, I mean, I thank God for the years that I masked. I met Ryan when I was working at the candy shop, and me and Ryan, we got tight, and I told Ryan said, well, Chief, can I take some pictures? I said, take pictures. I said, I'm going to put you right there where it's at. You know, so me and Ryan been tight with the Indian culture for a long time, man. And like I say, it's a lot that went into this culture. A lot of people don't understand where the culture revolved from. It was like back in the days, we didn't have a place, black people didn't have a place in the Mardi Gras parades.
No,
That
it
wasn't
grew out of exclusion.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it wasn't our, you know, that was their part of the, and I'll remind you that I'm not racist, I love everybody, I love what love me. But back then, the racial part of the thing in New Orleans was real serious, you know, so, I mean, it was like, we did this thing in our community because we didn't have a place in the parades. We couldn't be in the parades. I mean, if we were in the parades, we were the people that was cleaning up after the parade, flambeau carriers, you know, we were that. But we were not allowed to be in a parade. And so what we did to bring Carnival to our neighborhoods, we came up with this Black Mass and Indian thing. And that's our culture. This was made for us, by us, and it's always going to be us. But it's for everybody. You know, it's one
right.
love. It's for everybody. You know, so, I mean, what we do, 365 days a year ain't just for pride. It's for all of y'all. You know, and we have critics with it. Some people love it. Some people tell you Mardi Gras, oh, you could have did better than that, or, you know what I'm saying, I like this suit or I like that suit. But, I mean, it's just what it is, you know. Sometimes we have our bad days with this thing we do. You know, it's like, you know, every day the sun ain't going to shine, you know. It's going to rain, you know. So we had to juggle personal life,
I got it.
our wife,
Big
children, you know, and stick to the sewing thing, you know. So it get hectic, you know.
This leads me to the next question, which you actually started answering what masquerading and building Carnival for yourself, what it means to you.
To me,
Well, that's the next question. I think you actually went into that.
right.
But for you specifically, and then we'll come back this way, can you tell, you talked about it's all year round. Do you have a sense of how much time you put into your suit?
Well, it's basically a 365-day thing. I mean, the suits that we wearing this year, we almost finished with them. Mardi Gras, if the Lord said the same, we'd be able to put them on. It ain't raining. We'd be blessed with a good day. But basically, right after Mardi Gras, I normally take a week off and just collect myself, you know, and just sit back and get back to the norm a little bit. Then we right back in it again, you know. So it's very tedious. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
It's a lot of
Massing
work.
as a black man, massing Indian.
Ariana, can you just give us a sense of what it means for you to be part of Chewbacchus? And I think we're all kind of curious, like how much time you put into it, but also the expense.
Lots.
Yeah. When do you start? When do you?
Now. I'm already starting for next year.
Wow.
So, you know, running a parade organization as large as Chewbacchus is, there's many layers to what I do specifically, because it's not just about the making for me. I make my things for parade day. I make my costume. I make my contraption, but I'm also making a stage for other people to be in the crew, and that takes a lot of manpower hours of organization, figuring out permitting, talking about insurance, and all of those, you know, kind of boring things behind the organization, and that's a year-long volunteer job.
Well, and you'll have got the issue next year where it's going to be the normal date of y'all's parade would be some sporting
Yes,
event or other.
super
Oh,
sports
here
thing.
So they
Yeah,
may
it's
have
it's a constant
Yeah.
conversation. You know, we're already having conversations with NOPD about next year with other organizations who are parading around us to figure out if we have to move. That means you probably have to move too. You know, that's a year-long job.
And how many members do you think are in?
We rolled with
Chewbacca.
over 3,000 members this year.
Which is probably the largest in the city, correct?
Yes.
Um,
But to get to the what it means to me question, people kind of look at that number and think, oh, wow, well, that's a lot. But I think the core of what Chewbacchus means to me is about inclusivity and making Mardi Gras accessible to people who don't have the means to be, they're not connected, they're not wealthy, they don't have a place in traditional uptown Mardi Gras. When I first heard about Chewbacchus, what interested me was Star Wars was like family time for me.
mhm.
We're sitting around the table, it's always on. I don't know, I learned right from wrong, bad from good. These were the heroes in our family. And so the kind of marriage of something that was dear to me with New Orleans culture, which is also near and dear to my heart, it spoke to me, and I want to make sure that that's something that lives on beyond right now, that lives on for other generations of New Orleanians.
And beyond Mardi Gras Day. I'm always looking for like the love the next day.
Yes.
Like, okay, where'd it go? Let's remember the love from yesterday, everybody. We can keep going.
Well, and the connections and the collaborations and the artistry that goes into everything that happens for that one day extends beyond through the rest of the year. The friendships you build, the connections you make, the people who you learn from, it informs every part of your life in New Orleans.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stuart, do you want to?
Well, we while the Indians maintained their culture, and for all of the reasons that it was maintained, the handful of people who started Sainte Anne were actually pretty involved with some of the uptown parades. They were designers, and Henri Schindler did a lot of research on the themes and that kind of stuff. And they're all from here and saw how Carnival evolved once they stopped doing parades in the French Quarter. And these mega, as John Newland says, it looks like a double-decker bus and drag. These huge floats and stuff. And the focus became all about Canal Street and St. Charles and the big stuff. And the ladies and men that started Sainte Anne did so in an effort to revive the old tradition of you get together with your neighbors and he plays a trumpet and he plays a drum and let's go have a time in the neighborhood. And like I said, when I started, there were a few hundred people. Now it's thousands. I don't know if it's more than 3,000 or not, but I was speaking with Paul, who's one of the founders recently, and he said, we did our job. Last year I was standing waiting to get Sainte Anne into this flood of people going down Burgundy Street in the Marigny. And just kind of standing there and smiling and going, 10 years ago, there wouldn't have been a soul on this block of Burgundy Street. But when there's an idea, I think that what gets lost in a lot of the marketing of Mardi Gras is how deeply spiritual it is. That picture, the sewing, those are meditations. When you're sewing your beads on your outfit, or you know, putting your costume together, it's a meditation. And when you do it for 40 years, you know, our traditional route, we go down Royal Street to Canal, we observe the Rex Parade. That kind of has fallen off of the roster. The band goes and takes a break, and everybody's like, yeah, I need a beer too. But it used to be that we carry our crab nets, we call them the ribbon hoops, and you know, they would all end up on Canal Street, and Rex, the organization, knew that's Henri's people. And they'd flood us with those great little purple, green, and gold, you know, the little plastic beads with the crown on them. I still have a garbage bag of them somewhere, I'm sure. But it was like they recognized St. Anne was standing there, and then we go to the river, and you know, it started out with a few people had the ashes of their friends and relatives that they would put in the river at the end of the parade, and we dipped the crab nets and baptized the crowd. And then the 80s came, and St. Anne is everybody, but it was, the core of it was a lot of gay men, many of whom died. And now we joke and say, see that glittering sandbar out there, that's our friends coming back to say hi, you know. But when you have that kind of an emotional tie, we all get to the river and burst into tears. I can hardly talk about it. But that adds to this really spiritual element to all of this.
Yes.
You know, and the spiritual part of it is what ties people together, and that doesn't go away on Ash Wednesday. You know,
No.
It just grows over the year, and I started my costume yesterday, so don't.
For this year or for 2025?
For this year.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh
I'm kidding.
God.
Well, so since you've been involved for so long, how do you keep it fresh for yourself? And what do you do to pump yourself up for the next year? If it's been
There's me. At the river.
how do you motivate yourself?
The music. I put on WWOZ. That helps.
Yeah.
I have been buying a king cake for myself only.
That's where all the king. That's why they're
Right?
making so many king cakes. I wonder.
A
It's
Chantilly
you.
king cake from Bywater Bakery for breakfast. I'm having a little trouble this year. I've been doing it for 40 some years, and I'm not really. There's never been a hierarchy. We have never gotten a permit. It really is a bunch of friends getting together and going for a walk. And we raised the money to pay the band, and that recently has become a thing that I do. When we celebrated our 50th year, I was like, shouldn't we be doing something? And everybody was like, well, what do you think we should do? So I designed a solid gold parade. And I don't know if that was the first year you were with us.
One of.
Yeah. You know, it was a big hit. Everybody got it. Everybody wore solid gold. It was dazzling. We built even a little float, even though we really stressed this is a walking parade. Keep your strollers and tricycles behind the band. But there were always people that were sort of going, oh, let's do Babylon this year. But there was never a theme. But after the gold year, people all were turning to me and saying, what's the theme this year? So we did, I think Peacocks the next year, and then Phoenixes. We skipped a year because it was the pandemic, and then we did Phoenixes because the pandemic was supposedly over. I'm still coughing.
So the theme is chosen by just a few.
I did.
So, you okay? Great. Okay,
For a
yeah,
few
yeah.
years.
This is not a
You know,
democracy.
people kept
No.
asking me, so I was like, okay. Yeah. This year, I was like, the theme is do what you want. And that, as far as I'm concerned, that is always the theme. People see Sainte Anne, they get in there and they're wearing a, Nebraska football jacket and a backpack, and we're like, but the next year they show up and they have a headdress, and so I like to.
Your job was done. Your job has been done.
I worry about the culture getting dissipated. The Orvis purple, green, and gold striped shirts. I'm happy to see there are none in here. Like the commodification of Mardi Gras. I worry about that part of it. And as things grow, as Sainte Anne has grown, as Chewbacchus has grown, all these things that click. I have a purple party every year. It's out of control at this point. People show up, everybody wears purple. I don't know anybody at it anymore. But that kind of dissipation of the culture worries me.
Yeah, I think it worries all of us.
Yeah,
actually.
it-
I mean, I don't know how you control it. Even something as simple as Barkus a few years ago, I remember going and just having a blast because there was hardly anyone there,
Yeah.
hardly any dogs.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
dogs in the parade. But last year I went and I was so afraid that dogs were going to actually have
Yeah.
some interaction, and you couldn't even walk around. I left
Yeah.
because it was just. I mean, it's beautiful that it's grown, but it's hard to contain, and I think that's happened on every level for every.
I think that's what, in answer to your other question, that's what keeps me going, is knowing that there is no hot glue in my hat. I sewed every one of these freaking bells on this thing.
Wait, what's wrong with hot glue?
Nothing.
I couldn't. I
Nothing,
couldn't
but
participate in Mardi Gras without hot glue.
Sainte Anne always, in the early days, Sainte Anne was very informed by Venetian Carnival and antique costumes and that aesthetic. Paul Pochet really kind of established that aesthetic, which is totally gone now. Everybody wears whatever they want. And that's fine. But I still do that old aesthetic because somebody has to, to preserve that kind of.
Ariana, how do you keep it fresh? How do you get excited and motivated every year?
Well, the great thing about Chewbacchus being very pop culture influenced is that there's always new things to take inspiration from. Now that Disney owns Star Wars, there's always a new thing out. So I think, there's that kind of source material that helps infuse ideas, but really it's the conversations and the idea building with other people in the crew that help continuously innovate and incorporate new materials and new ideas and mix that up with old ideas. My sister's costume this year in Chewbacchus was this giant paper mache alien that's one of the singers in Jabba's barge. She looked absurd and beautiful, and I loved it. But what I really loved was her combination of she used this old, New Orleans paper mache costume technique, and then mashed it up with a Beyonce outfit. So there's always kind of a marriage of old and new, and I really appreciate that about our crew, and I think that that really keeps me going, and seeing other people what they did, and I was like, oh, that's really smart. How can I do that? How can I do that but make it me?
I think what you're saying and what I'm hearing as well is and one of the things that I see in everybody's Carnival from the ground up practices is the sense of community and sociability and solidarity that you build with people as you sew together, as you bounce ideas around, as you uphold long-standing traditions or even invent new ones. And coming
Share
from
wigs. Sharing wigs.
sharing, yeah, and coming from a city that doesn't have Mardi Gras, Halifax, Nova Scotia. One of the things that I wish for my city, and that I think that the rest of the world can learn from the way New Orleans does Carnival, is that, you know, we need, as human beings, we need these structures where creativity, where there's a kind of creativity and community that can flourish, and where you can, you know, see the gods walking in front of your stoop and learn how to become one with other people and with your community, and where you can, you know, see, hear your people on the radio and your way of joining into this carnival. And I think that's kind of that's the thing I wish that my city would create or find, and that's one of the things that, as an outside observer, I mean, I participate as well, but as an outsider, that's what I think we can learn from Carnival and maybe take seeds from to everywhere else, and to just the way that it underlines human beings' need for creativity and community and sociability together.
I think that's also something that, like, me growing up here, I feel like you can sometimes take for granted. And, you know, growing up with Mardi Gras, you don't, especially as a child, you don't realize that other people don't do this. And then you grow up and you start traveling and you go other places and you're like, why is it so boring here? And I think you're right, Martha, that sense of community, New Orleans has been through a lot, and I think that resiliency is very much tied to our sense of community, because we're all in this together. We've all had different struggles, different areas that have impacted us, and we keep smiling and dancing with strangers in the street, and I think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Big Chief, how do you keep it fresh after all these years? What's your
My
motivation?
thing that I teach about keeping Indian culture fresh is simple. When I teach the class to the kids, I teach an Indian beading sewing class to babies, and they're the future, right? So they're our future. So we teach them, and even the adults that come to the class, the parents, everything, I tell them all the time, I say, I'm very spiritual with the Indian culture. And for me, it's that, well, to keep it fresh is basically that, I tell them all the time, young people have dreams. People my age have visions. So I can sit at my house right after Mardi Gras, and I can lay down in the bed, and when my wife say, well, okay, we debate on colors, she say, oh, I want to wear this color. We'll fight about colors, and when I get the color, when I finalize the color, I can lay in my bed, and every suit that I put on from 11 years old, I see me before it was even done, walking in the streets in my suit. So a lot of people ask you, how you come up with this, how you come up with that. It's basically you being totally into what you're doing in this culture. And the culture is very spiritual. You know, what we do is what our ancestors did in Africa. We dance, we sing. If you go to Africa, the same songs we singing, they sing too. The way they dress, we just dress a little different, but it's very sacred. But I mean, every bead that I put on, I'm actually praying. I mean, every suit, every bead, everything on the suit is sold one bead at a time. So I tell people all the time, when I'm sitting down at the table sewing, and I'm sitting around with all the people that I was involved with when I first came in the culture, all the people that then left, all these people are sitting at my table every day in the spirit. You know, so I mean, I have no problem making a suit, you know, and I teach the classes because I try to get the kids another alternative besides hanging on the streets, you know, doing this or doing that, where you could be doing something positive. I mean, the creativity in massing as a black Indian it has no boundaries. It has no boundaries. I mean, it's just one giant, and I've been like this a long time ago. New Orleans is just one giant pot of gumbo. And in the gumbo, you got the social and pleasure clubs, you got Rex, you got Bacchus, you got Endymion, you got all the other parades that participate in Mardi Gras. We one big soup. And if you take one out, this gumbo ain't gonna be good. So, you know, we all got to keep keep doing what we're doing.
Every aspect matters. And,
Yeah,
and
everything matters. I mean, this is the biggest show in the world. When you come to Mardi Gras, if you've never been to Mardi Gras, you come to Mardi Gras, this is the biggest show in the world. So, I mean, to see this in its entirety, when you go back home, you're going to want to come back again.
I have to ask this question because I'm always curious. So you're beating together with other Indians? I mean, no, or you're off on your own?
No. What the Indian beading class that I teach is for everybody. Uptown Indian, downtown Indian, you know, it's City Hall gave it the name Uptown, Downtown. But like I told you earlier, everybody that put an Indian suit on, you understand, no matter who you mass with or what tribe you mass with, we one nation of Indians.
Well, I guess my question is, how do you decide which color? And if you show up in aqua and someone else is in aqua,
Well,
is there some like, wait
no,
a second, why did you took aqua? I have aqua.
Well, that's
Is that something you guys negotiate as far as
No,
the,
I mean,
the
that's-
colors for in your particular tribe?
No, that's the beauty of it. You know, it's like two suits will never be the same unless you make them like that. But if I'm sewing a suit, Ryan's sewing a suit, me and Ryan come out in the same color by accident, then our work is going to be different, but the color is the same. But no, nobody plans to do it like that. It's an individual thing. Like I said, it's a spiritual thing. You have to sit down and you have to like really just get deep in yourself with this culture, and that everything that you need to make the suit, every color bead, every color sequin, stone that you use, if you sew with the spirit, then the spirit will guide you to that. And a lot of people don't sew with the spirit, so they struggle with the suits. So we teach, the elders, the few of us that's left, it's like you teach one, you save one, you know, and that's what we have with the Indian culture. We trying to keep this thing going, and I'm asked my grandkids, I mean the babies, and teaching classes with the kids and stuff, is that because at a point, I did this for 43 years. I mean, I'm really at the end, but I can't stop. The reason why I can't stop, because the spirit didn't tell me to.
Well,
When the spirit tells me to stop sewing, then I'll stop.
I mean, and we've touched on this a couple of times about archiving work. How do you actually celebrate the work without expanding too much beyond the realm of what's possible? I mean, for me, I'm going to mention a film because my cousin made this film all on Mardi Gras Day, which came out in 2003. And I think what he did is he actually put on film the history of African American Mardi Gras traditions. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, I saw things growing up here, but I didn't really put the significance on it until I saw it on screen.
Yeah, because
And it was an idea like, oh, that happens and that happens and I see it. But now it's in a film and I get it. I understand these
really,
things that
not,
happen.
Not cutting you off, really back then, the black mass and Indians were called Mardi Gras Indians. But that's the name that City Hall gave us. We not Mardi Gras Indians, we black massing Indians. But the thing that you seen on TV, I mean, what your cousin and them did, the film, and I was here 2-3 weeks ago where they did the film for Tootie Montana, and I started in it. I was in it. I was a kid. I was in it. But the thing was that back then, it was really secret.
Right.
The black mass in India was a secret society. You know, I mean, it's just like it's a bloodline. Well, we didn't have the bloodline like Bacchus and Rex and Endymion. I mean, they could have a meeting and they could tell you who's gonna be the king and queen of Bacchus and Endymion 10 years from now, because it's a bloodline thing that they do. You know.
But I guess this brings up what the issue is: how do you archive, celebrate, bring it to the world, but also contain it, or at least keep it as authentic, as you mentioned, Stuart, earlier?
I mean, it's like right now. I done been to New York with the culture. I done been to Florida. I done been in a lot of places, and the crazy part about the whole culture, about the whole Indian thing, is that a lot of people, besides the people that are massing Indians, like myself, there's a lot of people that study the culture. And I say study the culture, I mean like really go in the libraries and dig up the resources and everything. They study the culture. So they know more than what some of the people that's participating in the culture know. But the culture is all over. It can't get, the only thing about massing and for this thing to be big and keep being big is that the people keep doing it. Because right now it's hard to mass. You know, it's hard to mass. We don't have financial help making these suits. I mean, we ride Peter for Paul, you know. Sometimes, you know, we take food off our table to mass, you know, for people that some gonna like it, some ain't gonna like it. But, I mean, long as we keep doing it, long as the spirit keep pushing you to do it, I think in my lifetime and what I done been through with it, I think that it's always gonna get better before it get worse. You know, and I think everything is in its proper place, it's in its proper time, you know, it's just waiting for the explosion. And when I say the explosion, that every way, I mean, you go to Hong Kong, China, you're going to know about this. You know, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I think it is happening.
And it's already
I think
happening.
it is happening,
Really.
yeah.
It's already happening, you know. So, I mean, it's just that we have to get in tap with our own resources and our own thing of my goal is when the spirit tell me to stop massing, I want to be the first owned black company that's selling, catering to the Mardi Gras Indians, the social and pleasure clubs, you know what I'm saying, and everything, all the feathers and the beads and the marabou that we buy, we get offline and all that. I mean, you know, I want to have a shop in this city where everybody could come get it, you understand, at the price that you're supposed to get it for. You know? And that's my goal.
Ariana? Do you want to, you know, you guys are relatively new,
Yes.
but actually, how many years?
This was the 13th Chewbacchus parade this year.
It's amazing. How do you feel and you know, when I look at the press, especially after Chewbacchus, I mean, it's far flung. Talk about Hong Kong. Yeah, everyone knows about Chewbacchus. Do you feel that is that a good thing to have it celebrated around the world, or just people seeing it that way? How do you feel it should be documented and preserved without destroying the authenticity or the beauty of what it is, if that's possible? Probably not.
You know, I think it's a difficult question. You know, Chewbacchus as a newcomer on the scene has certainly ruffled feathers in different ways. I think it's I think what we're all trying to do is kind of honor that do what you want to spirit in New Orleans. And as long as you're doing that, then what's the harm of how it's done? And just because it's not your way of doing it doesn't mean that it's not the only way. And I think, you know, Chewbacchus kind of gets some flack for for being a bunch of transplants, for being a bunch of out-of-towners, for being, people who aren't from New Orleans doing this, which I can say is it's like a mixed bag. There's anyone and everyone in our 3,000 members, and but the commonality is that we're all choosing to do this, and we're all enjoying it. So what harm is there in having fun? And as long as we're all consenting and enjoying it and loving it, then the more the merrier. The more who want to document, the merrier.
Stuart, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I really want to commend Ryan on his manner of documenting stuff, because he's never been in my face. I see him and he's like points at me and whatever. There are a lot of people that are not respectful, and so I would say when documenting, show some respect. And the problem, the big problem is the internet and cell phones. Everybody wants a selfie with you, and it's like, I don't know how many times people are like, "Can I take your picture?" And then they stand directly in front of me. I'm like, but I just recently came across something, the archives at UNO for Wavelength magazine. I think there are enough gray hairs in here who remember that. And there was a terrific article from John Newland in there about the case against Carnival. And he's outre, I would say, with some of his opinions, but he was one of the founders of Sainte Anne too. And he's like, there should be 6 major parades downtown. The other suburbs, Metairie, Mandeville, all of them can have their own. 6 big parades. He goes through a lot of stuff that is very controversial. It's hilarious. He says we should take 3 years off and rethink this, which we kind of got handed to us with the pandemic, right? He said maybe during that time they'll fix the roads.
That's great.
But looking back to those earlier times when things were simpler and before the internet and before going viral was a thing, it was easier to, we were the secret Society of Sainte Anne when we started, and we tried really hard to keep it under wraps for this very reason, because, like I said before, kind of the culture gets dissipated. And I'm not saying that Chewbacchus.
I take
is
no
dissipating
offense.
the culture. The bottom line is everybody wants to feel joy and express joy, and the aesthetics don't matter. Whatever opens that up in you, that's what you should do. And for Sainte Anne, it was feeling elegant and beautiful and opulent and antique, and it's no longer that, but that was the seed that drew the 3,000 people that follow us down Royal Street to jump in, or all the people that start out at Mimi's and are like, "Where's Sainte Anne?" I'm like, last
There's
year was
only so
beautiful.
many hooks in the world. You were talking earlier, like you could use a long hook and take someone out, but you can't.
Well,
You can't do that.
there are those who try.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, walk up to them and say, look how pretty I am. Look, I hot glued all of these beads myself, or whatever. But, show them what you do. Show this is who we are. You want to be in this parade? bring it up a little bit, you know? And I don't think that's an unhealthy goal for anybody. I want to be more
No.
fabulous.
Right.
I
Right.
want
It's
to be
also-
more colorful. I want
You're
to
right.
let my magic pour out all the
Mhm.
time. I don't want it to just be Mardi Gras Day.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
that's what made all of us to fall in love with New Orleans, because this is a place where you can freely express joy and feel joy and broadcast love, and everybody's just like, yeah, you're right. You know?
That's true.
But I think just to kind of put a fine point on what you were saying, I think the key thing that you're bringing up, and I very much sense this in the past couple of years as Chewbacchus has grown, is documentation with respect.
Yeah.
I think the respect has got to be at the core of what's happening, because
Which is hopeless, because everybody has a cell phone
Yeah.
and nobody behaves right.
it's it's fascinating. Our route now the past couple of years has gone through the French Quarter, and when we only rolled in kind of the Marigny Bywater area, it was definitely more of a neighborhood crew. And now that we've kind of added some part of the route through the French Quarter, the number of tourists that come and watch the parade is exponential, and they don't behave well. And it's like, how do we make a tutorial for people how to Mardi Gras and how not to Mardi Gras?
Yeah.
That's a lot. But we can't discuss that right now, but we do have time for just one or two questions from the audience. If anyone has anything they'd like to add, or any questions? No.
I just actually, I'm a trans woman. So, two things. I agree with what you said about my also photographer, and I loved when you first started watching him, because even though enviously he's tall, so he had the ability where the rest of us are standing on stools to get the shot. But if you watch how he does it, he's, first of all, if it's during Mardi Gras, he's dressed.
Yes.
I mean, I think that that's a wonderful thing. He is dressed in his red, whatever it is, if it's red beans, he's dressed in his red beans. He's dressed for moving within the community and not being an outsider observer, which makes it then a beautiful thing. Because I would take all those supplements and just push them away. But I also agree with what you said, and I'm sorry, because I was one of those people years ago of the tourists, and that's why I don't go uptown, because I wish there was a way to say, if you want that shoe, you can have it. I have them, but I don't know how you do that, to teach the culture.
Push the 3-year-old back inside. Can't do it. Once they catch that first handful of beads, it's like, I'm 12.
We just need to mind meld them into the collective.
Right. Well,
well,
you know, the city could
the
take
kids
a
that I,
different,
the
take a
kids that I,
different tactic
sorry.
how they promote Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
The kids that I teach the Indian beading and sewing class to, what attracts them to it is not just seeing us in suits. Is that when they come into class, and I set them down, and mind you, the stuff that they do, I tell them, whatever you got inside of you, draw it. You know, so they sit down there, and some of them, they'll draw circles, some of them will draw, and it's like kids, so they're looking at one another, just like in school, who gonna get it first, you know? So it's like, that's what makes them, that's what draws them to the culture, is that they could sit down there and everything they do, that we could put it on it. And I have done it so many years with them that whatever they draw, the whole time between that time we start the Indian bead sewing class up to Mardi Gras, the surprise thing for them is that they don't even know it. That's what's going to be on their Indian suit. You know, so they'll be like, they're so fascinated with, you know, oh, this is what I did, Chief Pie. This is what I did, Chief Pie. Oh, yeah. Now, when we put the suit together, you're going to see a whole suit, and it was all them, not Chief Pie. So that's how you get the kids to come into the culture. You know, you got to let them be them, you know.
And respect the culture as well.
Yeah, respect
it's
the
a
culture.
matter of
yeah.
respect.
You have to have respect for culture. The culture is like right now. There's a lot of things going on to the culture with the Indian sewing culture. I mean, Black Master Indian, is because chiefs are not teaching. They're not teaching. You know, it's a lot of things. You know, it's sometimes it's you have a little this, you have a little that, but everything is done spiritual. But if you're a chief of a tribe, you're supposed to be able to be a leader. You know what I'm saying? If you're not a leader, or you just, like, anybody can make an Indian suit, but do you have the love of this in you? And if you have the love in it, you understand, you're going to be the best.
You
Well,
had
and I think we can all kind of take a lesson from that too, is that the onus is on each of us as New Orleanians to teach the new ones how to do it, right? Like,
Right.
That it's not just about showing tits for beads.
No.
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 You know, that,
You had
I
a
think
question.
that became the thing in the
Yeah.
60s, 70s, and it's still like Bourbon Street is what Mardi Gras is about. So many people feel that way, and you know, the documentation is a great way to show look,
Exactly.
there's this whole other side to this. These people are spiritually involved with what they're doing. It's not just a
a peep show.
drunk weekend. You know.
Personally thank Ryan for all the years that he photographed us in our privacy. Nobody knows what we're wearing until Mardi Gras Day. But he, with utmost respect, always took pictures and never done anything without consulting the chief. And that meant a lot to us. And he's been around us for a long time. Before we became daddy. Long before we became
Oh, yeah.
daddy. But, I personally want to thank you on behalf of Monogram Hunters. Just being
Thank you. And with that, I think we're at the end of our discussion. I just want to remind everyone the exhibit is still up until Carnival Day. And this Sunday from 11 to 1, there'll be an opening with king cake and more discussion. Thank you so much, everybody.
We also have booklets, if anyone didn't get them, that we can hand out to you on your way out.
And I just want to thank the Jazz Museum and a shout out to the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada and the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation for making this possible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.